Have you ever wondered, what if the universe has a secret rule book? I don't mean the laws of physics we learn in school, but something deeper, a set of principles that decides what's even allowed to exist in the first place. Well, today, we're exploring that exact idea.
So let's just imagine for a second a cosmic blueprint, a kind of ultimate filter that sifts through everything we can possibly imagine and only lets the stuff that can be physically real pass through. What would those fundamental rules even look like? Come on, let's find out.
Okay, so this idea of a cosmic rulebook actually has a name. It's called Physical Vacuum Architecture, or PVA for short. And right off the bat, I want you to know this isn't just another theory about quarks and photons. No. Think of it more like the architectural code, the actual building constraints that reality itself is forced to follow.
And this brings us to the absolute core principle of PVA. It's really simple but profound. Just because you or I can dream something up, or a physicist can write a beautiful equation for it, that doesn't mean the universe can actually build it. You know? It's like the guest list for the physically possible party is way more exclusive than the anything you can imagine party.
So what PVA really is a set of these fundamental rules, you could call them axioms, that basically define what gets to be real. And it's super important to get this. PVA doesn't throw out quantum mechanics or relativity. Not at all. It's meant to be the foundation, the bedrock, that any real theory of our universe has to be built on top of.
All right, so let's get into the first big rule in this cosmic blueprint. And honestly, it sounds super simple, but it changes everything. And the rule is this: reality doesn't have infinite resources to play with. There are hard limits on what it can actually do.
This central idea is that there's a hard limit, called chi, on the amount of complexity the universe can handle. It's like it can't juggle an infinite number of things at the same time. And what that means for us is that every description we have of the universe, every theory, is really just a simplification, a kind of blurry, coarse-grained picture of a reality that is way more detailed underneath.
Here's a great way to think about it. Imagine the universe is a giant hard drive. If that hard drive doesn't have infinite storage space, well then there's a real physical limit to how much information and complexity can ever exist. And just that one single idea, that one constraint, has these huge knock-on effects for everything, from the tiniest particle all the way up to galaxy clusters.
Okay, get ready, because here's where it gets a little mind-bending. This limit implies another rule. What makes something real isn't what it's made of on the inside. It's how it connects to everything else. Its reality is defined by its boundary, its interface with the rest of the universe. So in this view, the interactions are actually more fundamental than the stuff itself. Wild, right?
So let's recap. Reality has limits. It's defined by connections. So what does it even mean for something to exist? Well, this next chapter in our rulebook is all about that. It's about stability and relationships.
The rule is pretty straightforward. To exist is to be stable. If something's going to be considered physically real, it has to stick around. It has to survive this sort of cosmic filtering process. This means that pure random noise, just meaningless static, that's not considered part of reality's fabric. Existence is for the things that have staying power.
And this is where it gets really weird. According to PVA, there are no fundamental building blocks. Forget about tiny little Lego bricks that make up everything. Instead, what we call an object, like a chair or a planet, is really just a stable pattern of relationships. The connections literally are the thing. So an atom isn't a thing as much as it's just this persistent, stable pattern of interactions. The relationship is the reality.
And I have to make this crystal clear. These rules, they aren't just in our heads. This isn't some philosophical game or a trick of the mind. The idea is that the structure of reality is objective. These constraints are baked into the cosmos itself, whether we're around to observe them or not.
All right, brace yourself for the next big idea, because this one really goes against our most basic gut feeling about how the universe works. PVA suggests that time, the thing that's always ticking forward, is not a fundamental part of reality.
Yeah, you heard that right. At the deepest, most fundamental level, the rulebook itself is pretemporal. It exists outside of time. So time isn't this great river that everything flows down. Instead, time emerges from the changing relationships between all those stable things we were just talking about. I love this analogy. It's like the plot of a book. The plot emerges from how the characters relate to each other. The relationships come first, and the ticking clock of the story comes out of that.
So you're probably thinking, okay, if the real reality is this timeless relational thing, why does the world look the way it does to us? Great question. PVA explains this with the idea of measurement being a projection. The best way to picture it is a 3D object casting a 2D shadow on a wall. We only ever get to see the shadow, and in that process of making the shadow, a ton of information about the real 3D object gets lost. Forever.
And that leads to a pretty sobering conclusion. The process doesn't go both ways. You can't take that 2D shadow and perfectly rebuild the 3D object that cast it. It's just not possible. And what that means for us, for science, is that we can never take our limited observations of the world and reconstruct a complete, perfect picture of the underlying reality. There is a fundamental limit to what we can ever know.
Okay, so we've laid down all these pretty wild rules about limits, about stability, about relationships being fundamental, about time not being fundamental. So what? What does this grand architectural blueprint actually tell us about the universe we see around us every day?
Well, for starters, it gives us a whole new way to think about a massive puzzle in physics, vacuum energy. PVA says, hey, maybe this isn't some weird, mysterious quantum force. What if it's just the minimum amount of energy the architecture needs to exist? Like a structural footprint left behind by the rules themselves. It's there because the rules of reality say it has to be there. Simple as that.
So when you put all this together, what you get is this really powerful new way of looking at things. It shows how our normal scientific theories, the stuff we use every day that works, can just emerge naturally from this deeper set of rules. It tells us that reality is objective, it's coherent, but, and this is a big but, it also has this built-in humility. It says our knowledge can never be 100% complete. And honestly, that's exciting, because it leaves the door wide open for all the new theories and discoveries yet to come.
And that right there is probably the most important thing to remember about all of this. Physical vacuum architecture isn't trying to be the final theory of everything. It's not the answer. Instead, it's providing the boundaries. It's drawing the lines on the playing field. It's setting the rules of the game for any future theory that wants a shot at being physically real.
Which of course leaves us with one last really fascinating question. If these are the rules, what kind of game is the universe even playing? And you have to wonder, how many more pages of that rulebook are still out there, just waiting for us to find them?